So this is the global forecast for 2020. I have no idea how long this video is going to take. I've just completed the 12 yearly videos for each sign of the zodiac and imbibed a fair bit of mead, so I'm fairly loose. I've been studying 2020 for quite a long time, at least a year, more like 2 or 3. And I've got this sort of idea in my head of how it's going to flow. Now, this doesn't actually translate into events or scenarios or situations. And I've always said to my clients, look, I'm lousy at prediction. I don't do events. I can't predict events, but I'm damn good with timings. So, looking at 2020, there are 3 big phenomena happening in 2020 and 1 or 2 specific nexus points, pimples on top of the boil. So let's look at these. Let's look at the big 3 things that are happening over 2020. Obviously, we cannot ignore the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. This becomes precise on the 12th of January, and actually, as someone kindly pointed out on one of my videos a month or 2 ago, it is not just the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. On the 12th of January, there is a conjunction of Saturn and Pluto and Mercury. Now, very rarely in astrology do things work to the day, unless Uranus is involved, but that's a different story. Nevertheless, I can't help but feel that with an eclipse of the sun, an eclipse of the moon, partial eclipse, relatively minor, but still significant, happening 2 days before the Saturn-Pluto conjunction on the 10th of January, I can't help feel that the end of the second week of January is one of the 2 most critical points of 2020. Saturn in Capricorn is consolidating and establishing old structures and boundaries. It's trying to put in place even deeper and stronger roots into what already exists. Capricorn as the sign of government, world government and personal government. Saturn as the planet of structure and order is trying to keep the old world order the same as it always has been. Pluto in Capricorn is transforming our ideas of governance. It is regenerating and rebirthing old patterns. Saturn and Pluto are not good friends, father and son. Pluto, or stroke Hades, was the eldest child of Saturn. So he was the first one that Saturn ingested and ate to stop his children usurping his power. So Pluto spent the longest time in Saturn's belly, in the dark. So they're not good friends. Now, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is a one-off situation. When Saturn stops going retrograde later in the year, stands still at about 25.5 degrees of Capricorn, by which time Pluto's moved backwards to 22 degrees of Capricorn. So they're only going to conjunct the once on the 12th of January. But this is a kind of forced marriage. It's a kind of shotgun wedding, if you like, of the old structures and boundaries and the desire for consistency and stability of the old with the forced imperative, the forced impulse for the transformation into the new. And this is the unstoppable force against the immovable object. So there's going to be ructions in January. Now, I suspect this, looking at the world the way I'm seeing it as I record this, I'm recording this on 29th, 30th of January, wouldn't be at all surprised if Hong Kong were to kind of erupt more than it has as we get into the second week of January. I suspect that political situations worldwide are going to come firmly under the microscope, whether it be the Australian Prime Minister going on another holiday to Hawaii whilst his country burns, whether it be the impeachment in the US, or whether it be the farce of British politics. It seems as if when you add to this the protests in the Czech Republic, Bolivia, Chile, world's in meltdown. And I suspect that in January it's only going to get worse. After this, Jupiter comes into play. Now Jupiter is also going to conjunct Pluto in 2020 3 times. First time on the 5th of April, second time retrograde on the 30th of June, and then finally for the third time on the 12th of November. And this is all happening between 20 and 25 degrees of Capricorn. So this is going to particularly impact on those people born around the 11th to the 15th of January and July. But on a global level, Jupiter and Pluto are quite good friends. They're brothers, equal and opposite. One rules the overworld, one rules the underworld. They're the biggest and the smallest, the brightest and the darkest. They're equal and opposite, equal strength. So I consider the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which runs from mid-February through to mid-November, to be actually a very favourable transition. Saturn-Pluto is going to be a major conflict between the old structures and the new imperatives, but neither will win. So there's going to be a bit of chaos in January. And then Jupiter-Pluto comes in, and we're going to start seeing the new rules, the new ways of governance, individually, localized and globally. A lot of changes in the way that nations are governed, that political blocs are governed, that finances are organized. And I'm actually quite positive about the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction from February to November, especially as at the same time, from April to November, especially because at the same time, Jupiter is also doing a 3-pronged sextile to Neptune. Neptune again, Poseidon, also one of the Saturn's children, et by Saturn. So you've got Pluto and Neptune, or Hades and Poseidon, brothers of Jupiter, both being very positively aspected by Jupiter. Jupiter will sextile Neptune in February, and then going retrograde in July, and then forward again in October. So this kind of says to me that there's going to be quite a sort of deep-rooted psychological transformation of value over the coming year. And I have to say I'm quite positive about what Jupiter's doing. And then particularly as we get into the very end of the year, on the winter solstice, or the Northern Hemisphere winter solstice, on the 21st of December, Jupiter and Saturn will be conjunct once and once only at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And I suggest that not only is this a very good sign of a new financial system and new financial structure beginning to develop, it's also happening at the very start of Aquarius, where Pluto will be in 2 or 3 years' time, just as Saturn and Neptune begin to come together at the very start of Aries in 4 years' time. So dare I say it, a year from now I'm going to start talking about the true beginning of the age of Aquarius. I don't want to get too cosmic, and I'm certainly not going to burst into song. However, this is the big picture. Then there's a complication. Just when you think it can't get any crazier, Mars is going to move into Aries at the end of June. And then it normally stays there for 6 weeks. This time it's going to stay there for 27 weeks, 6 months, because it's going to go retrograde in Aries. And it's not going to leave Aries until the start of January 2021. And during this transit of Mars in Aries for 6 months, Mars will square Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto 3 times. It will also, Mars on its way towards Aries, be in Capricorn over the period of mid-February to late March, and particularly in the last 2 weeks of March. Over the period of the 19th to the 31st of March, Mars in the sky will conjunct Jupiter, Pluto and Saturn in that order. This is explosive. This talks to me of some type of radical action leading to some type of sudden shift and change, particularly around the equinox, around the 19th to the 23rd of March, when Mars is conjunct both Pluto and Jupiter. And that's a really powerful time, really powerful. And then once Mars moves into Aries, we get into July, August, and Mars will square Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn over the first 3 weeks of August. Mars will then go retrograde and square them all again in late September and early mid-October, before completing the process with Mars squaring Pluto again on the 23rd of December, and then Jupiter and Saturn in the early new year. I can't help but feel that there's an element of surgical precision here. It's almost like watching a scalpel go in, and there's something incisive, laser-like, and there's going to be some pretty sharp, focused, intricate surgery happening in the second half of this year. And there is a specific time that jumps. I said there are two particular trigger points, the first of which is this period of the 9th to the 14th of January, with the Mercury-Saturn-Pluto conjunction at the same time as the lunar eclipse, over the 10th to the 12th of January. There's also the time around the 16th of October 2020. Now on the 16th of October, there is a new moon. It's a new moon at 23 degrees, to nearly 24 degrees of Libra. Thing is, this new moon, it's making a lot of aspects to different planets in the sky. It's squaring, it's opposite Mars by about 3 degrees. So straight away the Sun and the Moon will be opposite Mars. But the Sun, Moon and Mars will not only be opposite each other, they'll also all be square Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto, really strongly Pluto. So I actually think that this time around the middle part of October, the new moon on the 16th of October, is absolutely critical. It's easily the most potentially volatile, dangerous, risky time of the year, but it's also the time of the greatest incisiveness and incision, where if we're brave enough to take chances, things can really work out. Once we're into 2021, Jupiter and Saturn will be spending all year in Aquarius. Pluto will be left on its own in Capricorn. Yes, there'll be a Saturn-Uranus square in 2021. But seriously, that's all in 2021. The next big thing after this year is going to be the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the end of Pisces, start of Aries in 2025, 2026. I think that 2020 is the finale, if you like, to a process that's been building since the mid-60s, and particularly entering, to use a current in vogue terminology, endgame, that's been building since 1999 and accelerating since 2010 and 2012 and the grand crosses of those times. And this is pointing us now to a time where this year we're going to see the finale now, the end game to a lot of the old structures from the past. And by the time we're into this time next year, we should start to see the very first green shoots of something brand new and much more Aquarian instead of Capricornian for the future. Let's hope so. I'll drink to that. What a time to be alive, folks. I did a workshop a couple of months ago for about 35 budding astrologers. And at the end I said, as astrologers and astrologically knowledgeable people, we have a responsibility to the world to offer a different perspective, to inspire people, to bring hope into the world. That's what I'm trying to do with my astrology. And a big thank you to all those who have helped me. And now I'm going to go and mediate. I've just done 6 hours of recording. So Happy New Year, folks. Catch you in a year's time. I'll be here before then. And in a year from now, I'm going to be really looking forward to next year, just for what the hell it's going to bring. In a year from now, I'll be looking forward to a few years of relative peace and quiet. Cheers, folks. Bye now.